Richard Lederer, you've probably heard him, you've probably read his books, you've probably read about him. We are so privileged to have Richard Lederer on our show. He's calling in from San Diego, California. And Dr. Richard Lederer is, as I said, the author of many, many books. But he's such a sweet man. I was privileged to see him at Northern Trust when he was down here telling everybody wonderful stories about presidents. And if you give him a topic, he can research it and in no time make it a presentation that you would just adore. So I guess I want to welcome you, and then I want to ask you, once you say hello.
Hello.
Hello, Richard. I want to ask you, when did all of this start in your life? How young were you when you decided that you just were a magician with words?
Well, I love words from the beginning. I was smitten, and I was the kind of kid who would see a butterfly and say, ooh, a butterfly will flutter by. That's called a spoonerism. When I got older, I got even better at it, and I would say, ooh, a dragonfly will drink its flagon dry. See, I'm reversing simply the two initial consonants, and I was able to do that. And I was able to make it practical, too, because I ended up as editor of my junior high school lit mag and my high school newspaper, you know, the great American tradition, Mark Twain, Ernest Hemingway, Stephen Crane, etc., of learning by writing journalistically. But from an immigrant family, I was, you know, the kind of academic star, and there were expectations. So when I went to Haverford College, big jump from West Philadelphia High School, I was a pre-med, and I was taking all the pre-med courses and found that I was reading the chemistry formulae for their literary value. I knew something was wrong. I switched to English, and it was like the world opened up. Oh, my God, this language used so beautifully. A little bit like the male dancer in Chorus Line who goes to his sister's dance recital and looks and says, I can do that. I want to do that. But still expectations. I went to Harvard Law School. It would have been class of 62, a year before Janet Reno, who graduated in 63. And I, again, found it was okay, but I was reading the cases for the literary value. So I became an English teacher and ultimately a speaker, and indeed am heels over head in love with language. And it just all works together because I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, each inspires the other. I do 100 appearances a year locally, and it just all goes together. And the other thing is I'm absolutely addicted to learning. So, for example, for our local newspaper, the Union Tribune, I not only write a language column each week, Saturdays, but I do a history quiz every day. And right now it's on Charles Lindbergh. I'm working on the 20s. Well, I have to study that stuff, and then that you can write it and make maybe a little money with it, it just really urges you on and it builds. And I want to say one other thing about the writing, Anita, and this will sound like a boast, but it isn't. I am doing the best writing I have ever done, meaning I look at what I do now compared to when I was just a young kid in my 60s, and I know more about language, so there's a richer content. I know more about how to target an audience, and I know more about how to cobble words in the sentences and the paragraphs, what the length should be, how the transition works. So I really am writing my best stuff now, and I want to just tell our many friends out there that you get better in the humanities. You get better as you age.
Doesn't surprise me at all that you said that. I think that's true for many of us. But I wonder, do you have a mentor, or if not a personal mentor, do you have someone who you admire most?
Well, I admire William Shakespeare the most, but no, I don't really have a mentor. I have colleagues in the field, but I have to say no one who is, except for my wife, of course, who was strongly influenced my direction. But there it was. First of all, to be born as an English language speaker, I got lucky there. because it is so rich that people like me, a few of us, can make a living at it. But, my mentors are the people I read, and that would be Shakespeare at the head of the class, but many, many others.
Yes, I was wondering, I was going to ask you if you didn't say Shakespeare, that, and it's so interesting now that teachers are trying to teach this to elementary school children, which I don't ever remember having that taught to me. And it's the way,
it was high school.
Right, but now the way they're doing it, then the children understand it.
Great. That's wonderful. I mean, this is the most important writer who ever lived, and basically when you read the works of William Shakespeare, Anita, you are witnessing the birth of modern English, as well as some new forms, mixing comedy and tragedy. Almost 2,000 words he invented, and some of them are very basic to our language, in addition to all the wonderful drama and the cast of characters.
And was there a William Shakespeare?
Definitely. Nobody would argue that. There was a fellow from Stratford, born April 23rd, 1564, named William Shakespeare. He is acknowledged as a writer, but here we have the greatest writer in any language, in my view, who ever lived. And yet this controversy of, was it that guy who wrote those plays and sonnets and poems? Computer stylistics seems to indicate that it is. When you run the computer, in terms of how many does or how many new words or this, that, and the other, all these sophisticated devices, you find that it can't be Marlowe or Spencer or Bacon or Queen Elizabeth or Mary Herbert or Edward de Vere, Earl of Oxford, that it seems to be he, but people say, how could one who was never in court, is not a nobleman, write so cogently, presciently about court life? And how can one who has never been abroad write about France, Italy, Bohemia so vividly? And the answer is, I guess, he was extraterrestrial. You can't analyze him in the standard way. But I feel strongly that it is Shakespeare and that we ought to put that debate to rest. Good.
Well, we just saw Romeo and Juliet, the ballet. It was spectacular. Yes. And when you think about that was written by do we call him a poet or a writer?
Well, poet, playwright.
Okay.
And you think that it was written that long ago, and here it is. And that play was the first play that depicted passionate hormonal love between, essentially two teenagers. I think Romeo is 20. And flesh and blood and hair and bone people. Before that, there is nothing in literature that depicts this kind of love. All you would have is Troilus and Cressida and idealized love such as you would see on stained glass windows, in churches. But that's the kind of love you would get. This is the first play ever. And it mixes tragedy and comedy. There are comic characters in there also. Aristotle said you can't do that, the Aristotelian unities, but he did. And on top of it, he invents 1,700 plus words, including, majestic and so on, but also including bump, B-U-M-P, never seen in literature before that, road, R-O-A-D, and bedroom, one word, bedroom. They are first citations in the Oxford English Dictionary, Shakespeare.
And so we think today with our computers, how fast we can do things, and yet he had to write by hand with very low light from candles or whatever they had. I mean, it's really, as you said, it's terrestrial. It's just nothing we can ever comment on.
And you do know that we're very lucky to have the plays at all, because in those days, it was a low profession, and you didn't write manuscripts to be saved. And it was not until 7 years after his death at Cordell and Hemming, got the manuscripts and published them, and that started our love affair with Shakespeare.
No, I didn't know that.
Shakespeare himself didn't write them to be published, but thank God they did.
He wrote them to be read aloud, and then that was it?
Right. Well, here's an interesting thing. Yes, I mean, you put on the play, and that was the end of it. And here's an interesting thing vis-a-vis the computer. The computer, because we can memorize, I'll say that again, because we can find anything we want. Gee, what's that? Remember tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps on this petty pace from day to day. Life, is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Now, I'm doing that, of course, without the words in front of me, because I memorized that both in high school, and I continue to, because the words are so flaming. They burn themselves into you. Nowadays, the kids don't do that. All they have to do is say Act 5, Scene 1, bingo, Macbeth, and up it comes. So it's there. Shakespeare wrote out these plays, and the average troupe rehearsal time was 3 times, and they went on stage. And remember, the Iliad and the Odyssey were not written down. Those were all memorized, meaning we used to have far, far better memories than we have now.
Really? And
yes.
And that's because we forced our brain to do that, right? We are not just like addition. Where
right. We invented writing. That was 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. Cuneiform hieroglyphics and so on. And when we could write them down, we didn't have to use our memory that way. But before that, that's how we got the Iliad and the Odyssey, from generation to generation, spoken.
And I was thinking when I was in school, I loved, of course now it's called Man of La Mancha, but then, it isn't really that. And it was a very big book. It was one of the thickest books I ever had written.
Don Quixote?
Yes, Don Quixote. And
are you aware that he and Shakespeare died on the same day, April 23rd?
No.
1660.
No, he was. Yeah. That's actually my favorite book of all books. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And but you're telling me that originally was not written?
No.
That was
At
written.
That point they were writing.
They were already doing that.
But
yeah.
Shakespeare and Miguel Cervantes died on the same day. Shakespeare was exactly 52 years old when he died, because it was his birthday also, April 23rd.
Huh. But Cervantes wasn't the same age. They just died on the same day.
No, well, they were very similar age, but they died on the same day, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 giants, of course. So you're fairly fluent in Spanish then.
Well, no, I didn't read. I know I read the one in English, but
okay.
I know that there were a lot of Spanish words in it. But no, I read the one in English, but it still was very large. It was 700 pages or something. But I was taking literature in the University of Miami, and it was one of the first books that I ever really read like that, which I never forget it. It just was amazing to me. So,
and in my case, I read Lincoln Barnett, The Treasure of Our Tongue, compiled from a series of articles in Life about the English language, and that was my first inspiration there. I don't know what I call it mentorship, but that was the book, and I just remember reading these articles and then the book and going, oh my God, I love this stuff. Just love language. That's how it happened. And here I am, 76, still running around doing stuff. I'll just give you one small example. My new children's book, and I never thought I'd write one, it's my 9th, is a book called Monsters Unchained. 20 different monsters, each with his, her, or its own chapter. 60 original poems. Can you imagine?
No.
Original. 60. 30 of them limericks. A dragon with fiery plume crashed a wedding and smashed up the room. Ate every hors d'oeuvre, crushed the cake, what a nerve! Then toasted the bride and the groom. The invisible man came to dine. He sat right to my left, which was fine. but his rumblings abdominal were simply phenomenal, and everyone thought they were mine. So just loved writing it. It was like a small death to finish it. So a group here called Juvenile Court Book Club, judges and attorneys, bought 150 of them for the unfortunate boys and girls in the holding facility in Kearny Mesa here, where they are sentenced and held for rehab or reform school or jail, and then had me come in with 3 different groups of these youngsters, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, back in the fall, and work with them, and it would just make you cry. I mean, these kids are often in the same gangs that their grandparents are. You know, it's a family tradition, but they loved monsters, they loved the book, and they just talked about that, and then, oh, Mr. Lederer, how do you write something like that?
Right.
Well, here's how you make your choices about life, and that's one of, I mean, every day is an adventure, especially, I meet the best people at their best. These kids were terrific.
Can you imagine if they had a father like you? You see, that's really what we look at here. Some of them do escape to become very, good citizens and to have a good life, but then some just can't make it. But you always think about people like you, and I know you have a wonderful family, and that's a sad part. But something you told me when we just got on that you now had major surgery, but that you're really recuperating well.
Well, a total left knee replacement, 3 weeks and a little bit more as of this interview. And here are some lessons I've learned. First of all, yes, I'm feeling real good. You know, they've got titanium, much stronger than anything my body can produce, and emollients in the middle that, in terms of its pace of wearing down, will give me 20 to 25 years, which gets me to 96 or more. They saw and they hacked and they put it in. What was happening with me is I had 3 meniscus operations on the left knee, and it was really affecting my tennis, my lateral movement, and my running backwards. And then it started to spill out to getting up, from chairs, toilet seats, etc., climbing stairs, and I didn't like that. And, on Medicare, it's essentially covered. So I went and aggressively pursued this, got the best guy in our city. No general anesthesia, and that's good because I really try to, watch my brain cells. I need them for what I do. Epidural, spinal down below, just the sedation up above. Didn't remember a thing about it. I was walking the next day a little bit with the walker. I went home, played poker a night after that. And there the danger is the Percocet, is it going to make you loopy and then you lose all your money? But it didn't. It went fine. And about 2 weeks after, I began speaking again. And it just, so the thing is, it's really worth whatever pain there is. You will be able to do things, including tennis, but by now I get up out of and get down in the chairs, in the cars, much easier. I just am stronger with that left knee. Now, some can argue you should wait until you have to beg them to do it. And that may be right, and I am not giving medical advice as a doctor here, please. But if you wait, you may not be able to have it. In that, if you wait, I don't know, in your 80s or whatever the cutoff point would be, first of all, it may be so far gone that they can't fix it. Second, you may not be able to pass, the blood panels or the cardio. Sorry, you can't do it. Your heart isn't strong enough. And I had to pass those, and I did just fine. But I didn't feel I should wait. And what I'm saying is now, let me think for a minute, 22 days later, I can get around fine with a cane, and I can even discard the cane. I'm long off of the walker. I ice and elevate, because if you don't do the exercises, the adhesions will build up, and it's as if you didn't have the operation. You must do what they tell you. And, of course, there's going to be a little pain, trying to get the knee back to at least 120-degree flexion. So they have those, plastic, almost like protractors that measure. I'm up to 110 already, but I'm constantly, under the doctor's orders, bending the knee either back toward me or put it out straight and then push down on the kneecap. And it is definitely the right decision. I will live a better life because of it.
And you expect to play tennis?
Within a couple of months. Yeah, you get these rumors, there are parts that'll fly off. That's just not true. I mean, again, I'm not saying this as a medical person. I will be playing tennis, and it will certainly be better than where I was right before I left it to do this. My lateral movement, rather than looking at a ball and saying, I can't do it because I'm going to just crush my knee. Now, pretty soon, I'll be able to at least try to get to the ball.
Have you had any hip surgery also, or just strictly knee?
Just knee, but shoulder, hip, and knee are among the highest patient satisfaction procedures you can have.
Well,
and again, you're not on your own entirely because, first of all, you have the home physical therapy. And in my case, that was only about a week because I was progressing so well. Now I go to outpatient PT, all covered. The place is a mile away. In fact, tomorrow I go. And a physical therapist really works on the knee, and you can just feel the adhesion kind of melting away.
Well, when Bill he's had hips, and then he had the knees, and he was told that, fine, Bill, because he was an avid tennis player. They said, you could do it. But he said, you are taking a chance. He said, and it probably isn't worth it. And so and of course, he decided he wasn't going. Now, he was older. I think he was probably in I guess the first ones were in the 70s, but then the 80s. So I said, and then he isn't a doubles player. So
no, he isn't. So that's singles, right. That would be tough.
That's right.
I'm going to stick to doubles.
Good. And I told him you ought to get a Wii and try that. No, he wasn't going to do that either. So he walks and he does a lot of things, but he never did get back to tennis. And I think it really was the sad part about all this. But he's great. But I'm glad that you're doing so well. And of course, in the recuperation time, it gave you probably more time to think about some of the stuff that you do. Was this wonderful the books, the monster books? Is that something you did before or while you were recuperating?
Oh, it was before. It came out for Halloween last October.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And was such a joy. I mean, I don't think I've got another one like that in me, but I sure take it around the places. And my newest book is American Trivia Quiz Book, of quizzes about our great nation.
Mm.
And, of course, we're getting into the season. You saw me do Presidents with Northern Trust.
Oh, I know, yes.
I now have a PowerPoint show for that.
Huh.
And also, I know more about the presidents than I did. So really, starting in a couple of weeks for the next year and a half, I'll be doing fascinating facts about our presidents. And by the way, would love to do a show with you, a half hour of fascinating facts in which every sentence will be a revelation to many of our listeners.
Oh, I would love it. That would be a wonderful thing. So when will that be ready?
Now.
Oh, is it okay? Well,
yeah, because again, I'm actually doing the district rotary, and obviously we're not going to do PowerPoint on radio. But I've got my stuff all in a row, and it's just great fun, and just a very interesting group of men. And will it be men after this election? We'll see.
Okay, well that's really great. Well, I always love to know what you're doing. Of course, we're still using your amazing words, which they are amazing. And it's funny, I never know about my audience because some people, you don't know how people think about it, but inevitably I get someone that says, I love Richard Lederer's columns. They are so interesting. They are unique, and on and on. And so I like to uplift people, and that's why authors and columnists like you never know if you've just had even 20 people who are better off now.
One person.
Yeah, well, I think we get a little bit more than that. Our radio shows get people that call us, and they want to know. As a matter of fact, I have to do this. They always say, you don't tell me who the people are. I have to do it again. Richard Lederer. He's the author of many, many books. If you want to get on his website, and you'll see all the books, so many, and they're varied. Actually, they're children's books. They're books on all sorts with animals. They're wonderful. Go to Verbivore. That's VERBIVORE.com. Verbivore.com, and his name is Richard Lederer, and he does live in San Diego. He is probably I always call him the world's greatest, I guess, wordsmith. Is wordsmith, is that
it is.
good enough for
but
you?
I would say,
what?
At any rate, what I do, I am a popular linguist, meaning I, at some point, had to make a choice between academic linguistics, which I absolutely adore, or speaking to as broad a base as possible, and I chose the second.
Okay. I got it then. Popular linguist, yes.
And a verbivore. That's why my site is called VERBIVORE. Yes, about 50 of my books are there. They're basically language, non-language, such as aging, the gift of age. That's my second biggest seller now.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the children's books, of which the monster book is my biggest seller.
By the way, do you have pictures in your monster book?
Only 80 of them.
Oh, you do? So it's black and white? I mean, they're diagrams.
Yeah, they're black and white.
Black and white.
I'd love them in color, but...
No, it's all right. Right.
So 80, absolutely, and every monster gets at least one limerick and other poems and more than 1,000 jokes. Anita, how can you tell when a vampire has snuck into your refrigerator?
Oh, let's see. How? My milk has gone sour?
Not bad. Well, there are two answers. One is there are 2 little fang marks on your can of tomato juice. And the second is all your jelly donuts have been sucked dry.
Oh, yeah, that's great. And with that, Richard, we have just run out of time. It's been just so special speaking with you, and we will come back to you for for what you're doing now with the presidents and other things. Thank you, Richard, and keep rehabilitating.
Yes.
All right, bye.